Do traditional distillers understand what you're doing, or do they question it?
They question it. Yes. Well, I think it's Bill Lark, who a lot of people would know of, who started it, got the wine. He calls me the Willy Wonka of whisky. I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll start up a little distillery. I had some spare old stables. There was nothing in there, old horse stables. And being a farmer, I get pretty handy at welding and manufacturing things. So, yeah, that's the old stables there. So I set to work and built myself a still. I've done a lot of welding over the years. And, just being a farmer, you're repairing and fixing things and making stuff. I hadn't welded any copper, but one of my sons, he's got a mate who's a boilermaker. And so, yeah, I spent a few hours with him teaching me how to weld copper. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
But no, I got the hang of it mostly. Don't look too close to some of the welds. Don't look like more like pigeon poo, some of them, but it holds together. Those right, yes, yeah. It's I'd heard about malting drums, and originally I was doing malting on the floor. And, if I went away for the weekend and it was at the wrong stage, I'd come back and there was just a massive roots and things all tangled up on the floor. And because you've got to keep turning it very, very regularly.
Turning it, yeah.
Yeah. And so I had this old clothes dryer that someone had given me, an old electrician gave me years ago. It got burnt out in a fire. But it had all the cogs and things on it still, and that all worked. And so I just put some finer mesh inside it so the grain wouldn't fall through the holes, put a little sprinkler system in there, and the geared down motor, and it's got a timer on it. So it gives it the grain a squirt of water about 3 times a day, and then just turns it over very gently all by itself. So you just put it in there, come back 3 days later, up to 5 days later in the winter time, and it's all sprouted nicely. Yeah, I've been to a few of the maltings over there, and yeah, the one at on Isla, the big maltings there. Yeah, this is just a mini version of these monster things.
The one at Port Ellen.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do mostly grain whiskies, so we only need to malt about 15% of the grain. That's how I can get away with it is quite a big clothes dryer, but it's it's not your little household one. But we can malt enough in there just to do a batch. You can see just on the right-hand side there, that little bit of plumbing work, that's the sprinkler system that wets the grain. Because we only malt about 15% of it, and we don't actually dry it. We have dried it in there, but it takes several days and a lot of energy, a lot of heat to dry the grain, so we just use it green. 85% of the grain, roughly, is just raw grain, so we just crush that in a traditional grist mill.
Yeah.
But then the 15% of the grain, we grind it up in a meat mincer at wet.
Yeah. I don't think I've got a picture of your meat. Oh, yeah, I have. Here's the meat mix.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the old one. Yeah, we got a bit better one now out of a butcher shop.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
that one fits in with all the other images, though, I think.
It does, yes. Yeah. But that tumble dryer is great. The Port Ellen's maltings, they soak their grain initially, then put it into the big drums, and then they get it out of there and they smoke it and dry it. Well, this clothes dryer, the whole lot happens in there. I just put it in there, dry grain, and it comes out even up to smoked.
There you are at work with the smoker. And
Yep.
And you're not shoveling peat into that smoker.
No, that's sheep dung, barrel-loaded sheep dung from around behind the distillery, the shearing shed.
So the sheep still come in handy.
Oh yes. Yeah, well, they do several things. They all the draft, the spent grain, we feed that to the sheep, and they love it. Yeah, they fight over it. And then they put that out, and it's good fertilizer for the farm. And then when they're in the shearing shed, the dung drops down through slats in the floor and dries out under the shed. Then we just wheel that barrow around the back of the distillery there where the shearing shed is and load her up.
And then you get Gordon Ramsay to shovel it into a wheelbarrow for you.
Yep. Yeah, I've got another celebrity coming fairly shortly I can't name who it is, but he might end up shoveling shit too.
Gordon Ramsay looked like he was a little bit shocked, but I think he was prepared for it, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He knew what he was going to have to do.
He knew what was coming. And this shot here, that's the smoker, right?
Yes, yeah, it's just an old gas bottle, well, two gas bottles. The bottom cut off one and clamped onto the top. It's had a few changes over the years. That bit sticking out the sides no longer used. That was when I smoked. I thought I needed a bigger outlet for the smoke, and I decided I didn't. It was a bit inconvenient. Yeah, it's getting pretty rusty. I might have to build a new one soon.
You know, let's just go back to the sheep shit for a minute, because I've had a question from someone, and he said, hang on, let me find out what he said. He said, using sheep dung looks terribly interesting to me, but what's the exact flavour profile?
Peat is just vegetation that's in swampy ground, very acidic, low oxygen ground, and it only breaks down very, very slowly because of the acid. Now, sheep stomach, they just eat grass. It's just vegetation. Sheep stomach's very acid and low in oxygen. So it creates about the same amount of chemistry, the same amount of chemical reactions, but in about 3 or 4 days, instead of waiting hundreds of, if not thousands of years for the same thing to happen. And it's dried out, and there's no smell to it once it's dry.
In that little video you sent over, that you said it has sort of a hickory type smell.
Yeah, I think actually it might have been Gordon Ramsay or the one that. No, it was Jim Murray that mentioned the hickory bit. Personally, I don't actually know what hickory smells like. So, I just copy someone else's tasting notes.
It's obviously good because people love the whiskey.
Oh, it's our best seller. Yeah.
What do you call it? You don't call it peat. What do you just call it? Smoke.
Holy shit.
That's the name of the whiskey?
Yes.
Seems like there's a lot of experimentation. So are you after a particular flavor profile, or is it you make the whiskey and whatever comes out comes out?
2 identical barrels put down the same day will taste different when as they age. But then you can fix that a little bit by blending different barrels, but we don't have hundreds and thousands of barrels to blend to be able to get a consistent taste. But that's what craft's all about. I don't think people expect to have exactly the same thing next time. But yeah, we do experimental as well as having that reasonably standard range. Yeah, we certainly do some experimenting. And I do love smoke. That's what got me onto whiskey. Though I wasn't really a whiskey fan until someone gave me a taste of a Lagavulin 16, and I think a lot of people, this is what's got them onto it as well. And so I've always really enjoyed my smoky whiskies ever since then. When I suddenly realised, wait, on whiskey, you don't mix anything with it. You just drink it as it is and taste what the maker has made. But yes, I've always loved the smoky, and we've actually got 5 different versions of smoke. There's the 2 sources of smoke. We got the sheep shit and the peat, and the peat comes from my brother's farm. So we've got my own supply of peat, but it's like a 6-hour round trip to go and pick that up. So the wheelbarrow around the back of the shearing shed's quicker. Then we actually smoke barrels as well. So before we fill them up, we wet the barrel and pump smoke into them.
Oh, right.
That'll give a very different smoke profile. And I think from my research that I'm possibly the first person in the world to actually smoke barrels. No, we just have a barrel. You soak in a bit of water just to get the wood inside wet. And then we from that smoker there, we hook a hose onto that and poke it into the barrel. And then just fill it up with smoke for hours and hours until a lot of smoke soaks into the wet wood. And then we'll fill it up with a spirit. Yes. Yeah, a lot of this story was about the terroir of the land where the barley came from.
Yeah.
And that's what we tend to push here a lot. Because we grow all the grains right next to the distillery, we actually start out wild ferment. Yeah, when we do our mashing, we don't actually add any yeast until the next day. So there's wild yeast in there from our farm, and there's and one really important thing is the lactobacillus, which a lot of alcohol manufacturers hate that because they get a lower alcohol yield. But the lactobacillus and the lactic acid and the alcohol form these beautiful fruity esters, and it's really, really specific to those actually strains of lactobacillus and wild yeast is specific to our area. And so we are very, very focused on terroir whiskey. I'm sure if we bought in, grain from somewhere else, and especially when you use malted grain, it's been dried in a kiln and it's lost a lot of that that the organism part of the terroir. Terroir is to do with the soil and the grapes and things like that, but it's also to do with the organisms that live in the vineyards and whatever. And people who taste Belgrove whiskey, they know it straight away, and it's a lot to do with with our terroir. And whereas I don't think you get anywhere near as much of that in malt whiskey because the grain's been dried in a kiln.
It's interesting that you say that your whiskies, people can tell when they're drinking a Belgrove whiskey.
Yeah, it's a lot to do with that terroir, but it's also to do with that direct flame still. That caramelizing and that little bit of charring and that Maillard reaction, there's not a lot of distilleries have that these days. They used to, but not many have it now these days.
Yeah.
And we get terroir too. You've got terroir from the land, like we've got. Certainly the land terroir comes through. There's also the distillery specific terroir just from the building itself. This happens in breweries, and the microorganisms that live in the brewery and in the mash tuns and in the fermenters and things like that. That's more terroir of the actual building rather than the actual land around it.
Do you think having the wooden fermenters makes a big difference?
I'm sure it does. There's all sorts of bugs that live in that wood. We can't sterilise it. So once we get a nice stable population of them in there, then they look after it for us, and it's almost like a starter culture living in the wood.
Yeah.
So as long as we don't get anything nasty in there, but it's that lactobacillus, it's our friend.
Yeah.
Breweries and a lot of distilleries don't like it because, like I said, that it gets rid of some of your alcohol or your potential alcohol. But we're not focused on alcohol. I just wish, I say this often, I wish I could make a whiskey that tastes like a car strength one that was 5% alcohol. So just think how much I could sell, how much people could drink. It's that the alcohol that stops people drinking.
It'd be like the same ABV as beer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. As you're using 100% rye, do you find that people think your whiskies taste a little bit towards bourbon or not? I mean, obviously it's not bourbon because you haven't got a corn mash and all the rest of it in there, but like a bullet rye, for example.
They're very different from the American ryes. Yeah, from what I've got bullet rye, and it doesn't. Yeah, it tastes very, very different from what I've got. Yeah, and I don't know why I did 100% rye. Really, I just like a challenge, and you don't like something too easy to do. American rye whiskey's got to be at least 51% rye, or bourbon's got to be at least 51% corn.
Yeah.
But it goes through, the totally different process to what I do. They don't have that terroir when they with the rye and those big industrial ones. They really cook the hell out of the grain, so it's lost all that natural terroir that I get, and a lot of those esters aren't formed. So it'll give a totally different flavour, just the manufacturing process. Even though we are both continuous distillation, I've got quite a different process coming up to the actual distilling, and quite a different still.
It's almost like every step along the way, you're adding more and more flavour.
Yeah, like I hinted before, the yield to me, or yield to a lot of people in the distilleries, is the amount of alcohol you can get out of a ton of grain. But to me, yield is the amount of flavour I can get out of it.
Do traditional distillers understand what you're doing, or do they question it?
They question it. Yeah. Yeah, we don't go. I would get bored. I do get bored very easily. I always like change, having a challenge, doing something different all the time. And if I was just making malt whiskey, it's very much a step-by-step process. A certain temperature, a certain volume, a certain weight of this and that, and a certain time you do this for. And but I love what I do now. We're just playing around with different grains all the time. We've even done spelt, and just love playing about, trying to create different flavours all the time.
And everyone just thinks you're a mad scientist over there, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's Bill Lark, who a lot of people would know of, who started it. Got the wine. He calls me the Willy Wonka of whisky.